Hey, how's it going everyone? It's Chloe / Jelly Yak here with another drawing. So I was thinking, like, what do I want to draw? What do I want to make for this week? And I was just sort of scrolling through and looking through some of my old artworks, and I found this old artwork that I did in 2019, I believe, for Inktober. And I thought, well, I've been trying to learn digital painting, so why don't I redraw this image and just see what I can do with it and just see if I can paint it and yeah, see how it goes. So another reason why I picked this image, apart from wanting to redraw that particular one, is like the picture's already pretty much in black and white. So at the moment, with me trying to learn more digital painting techniques, I'm just working in monochrome at the moment because it's easier for me to judge the tones rather than trying to introduce colour at the same time. So I thought, this picture's already in black and white, I'm lazy, don't want to convert a picture over. So may as well do that one. So I spend most of the time on the face, as this is a picture of an actual person. This is Trent Reznor from 9 Inch Nails, if you don't know. So I wanted to try and capture the likeness as much as I could. So yeah, obviously working on the face is going to be the most important bit. The hands don't have to look exactly like his hands, it doesn't matter. Like, theirs need to look like hands, but his face needs to look like him. So how I'm approaching digital painting at the moment, I've laid down like a middle tone, and now I'm sort of like blocking in all the shadows. So I did some areas like with a hard line and just filled them in for the main dark areas, and now I'm going in with a soft airbrush to sort of sculpt in the face. So I sort of think of it as like sculpting, trying to build the form of the face with the shadows, and then I'll go back in with the light tones after I get those sort of the dark areas down. So here I am with the initial pass of some light tones, and then I'll just work towards blending them together. So my first stage I sort of think of like sculpting in the main features, and then think of it as like a push-pull between the tones. So I'm constantly changing between light and dark tones, trying to, you know, make them look good, blend them. As you can see, what I'm doing here, I'm changing some of the features because they're not quite right to my reference. Again, I'm trying to get the likeness as best as I can, so I need to make sure that the features match the reference so it looks like him. So I'm just pushing around some of the darks and the lights to change some of the features a little bit to make it look more correct to the reference. So I fiddle with the face quite a lot. It's the most important part of the image. So obviously I want it to look nice. I want it to look good. As you can see, I'm often zooming out a lot. So I'll zoom in and like fiddle with the little details, but then I'll zoom out and see how it looks overall. I talked about this in my last video about the digital tips. Like, sometimes you can just get too zoomed in and bog down the little details, be like, this is not exact to the reference, it's not exact to the reference. But when you zoom out, like, sometimes you can't even tell. Like, I will zoom in on the reference and in my image, like that point there, I zoomed out, compared it to the image, and then it was probably too quick for you to tell, but here I'm pushing some of the lights and darks around to sort of match the reference a bit more, because I noticed when I zoomed out it wasn't quite right. So that's what I was doing there. So now I will fiddle with the face a little bit more, but the bulk of it's done. Just refining some of those highlights a bit more, and then I'll sort of work on the next bit of the piece. The original photo is quite dark, and as I'm trying to copy from an image, I don't want to lighten up the background or anything like that, because then I'll have to guess what's there, which I don't want to do. That won't really make for a good study. I want to like draw what I see, basically. So I kept the background quite dark. Like, I could have put details in the hair, but I felt like I wanted the focus to be more on the face, so I didn't want to spend my time doing all the hair when it's really dark in the image anyway. And like, I could see some variation in tones in the original image, but I felt that just having the solid black hair is fine for this particular piece. Keep it nice and dark like the original reference. So here I'm just sort of blocking in the main tones for the hands. This feeling with textures, couldn't help myself. I'm like, I'll leave the textures to the end, but then I was like halfway through, I'm just like, no, I want to see what it will look like. But yeah, so the hands, I know they look quite odd at the moment. It's sort of like a weird hand positioning in the photo. You'll see why in a moment. So I'm just sort of blocking in the rough areas. I try and do a little bit more detail there on the thumb, but I'll get back to filling in the hands properly. So in this photo, he's sort of like wrapped in this wire, which is why the hands are like in that awkward position, because he's holding them like all wrapped around himself and things like that. So I wanted to just get the base shading done for the hands first, and then by adding in these sort of wires, I could figure out where I needed to also add the shadows from the wires on the hands. Because I could have, you know, guessed and then drawn the wires after, but I'm like, I'll set the wires first, and then it's easier to work the shadows from what's there in my image, because you know, it's never going to be 100% to the reference. So there's no point in me trying to guess where the shadows are and then try and make the wires look good to the shadows. It makes sense to do it the other way around, at least for me anyway. But yeah, so here I'm back trying to detail these hands a bit more. His hand was a bit odd to work on because he's got like the wire things like pulling at his skin a little bit, so there's like crease around his thumb. I'm just trying to make it look as good as I can, because everyone, if you're an artist, you know how difficult hands can be. And they sort of like merge into the background as well because of how dark this image is. So I'm trying to like get that feel. I found when I was drawing it, like at this point, the sort of like veins and tendons or whatever's going on in his hands, like they're really prominent. In the reference, they're quite prominent too, but not as much as I've interpreted them initially. So I just went over with like a soft brush with like a mid-tone and just, or a darker tone, and just gone over the whole area to help blend it in a little bit more, so it's not so like, this is really sticking up out of the skin. So I just toned it down a little bit so it was a bit more, I guess it helped make it more realistic. I'm not sure. Compared to the reference, it looks a little off, but I think it gets the sort of point across that I was going for. So I didn't want to fully render the wires either, so I just sort of picked this rusty colour and added a texture over them and sort of blended in the edges where they disappear in the image. And that is it. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm really surprised. I haven't really done much digital painting at all, so I'm really happy with how it looks, and I think it's a good first complete digital painting. I'm really proud of this one. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.